Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I sat there staring at my steak going cold, watching my younger brother Derek accept congratulations from every table in the restaurant. Regional sales manager at 28. Mom practically glowed as she told the server to bring another round of champagne. Dad kept slapping Derek's shoulder, beaming like he'd won the lottery himself. Meanwhile, I might as well have been invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me that the $6,200 I transfer to their account every month probably paid for this celebration dinner. When Derek raised his glass and toasted, "Family support," Mom's eyes found mine with pure ice. "Leave. Covering bills doesn't mean you matter." Dad nodded in agreement. "You're just bitter he's doing better." The restaurant buzzed around us, but all I could hear was the sound of my heart breaking. This was it. The moment I realized I'd been funding my own erasure from this family. I should have walked out right then. Should have thrown my napkin down and left them to figure out who was picking up the check. Instead, I excused myself to the bathroom, needing air that didn't smell like their indifference. When I came back, Derek was gone, probably taking a business call in the parking lot. That's when Mom dropped her mask completely. "Sit down, Horace. We need to discuss something." Dad leaned forward, his voice low. "Derek doesn't know about your monthly transfers. We told him the money comes from insurance settlements from your grandfather's accident. My grandfather had died in a car crash 15 years ago. There was no settlement. There was no insurance payout. There was only me working 60-hour weeks at the manufacturing plant, living in a studio apartment, so they could keep their 4-bedroom house. You told him what?" My voice came out strangled. Mom's lipstick had worn off from the wine, making her look harsh under the restaurant lighting. "We didn't want him to feel obligated to us financially. He has his own life to build. And what about my life?" "Your life is fine," Dad snapped. "You don't have a wife, kids' responsibilities like Derek does." The words hit me like physical blows. Derek wasn't even engaged yet, but apparently his hypothetical future family mattered more than my actual present sacrifice. "Derek thinks we're self-sufficient," Mom continued. "He believes we managed to pay off most of the house with smart investments. We've been telling him you're jealous of his success and trying to take credit for our financial stability." I gripped the edge of the table. "You've been making me look like a liar. We've been protecting the family dynamic," Dad said, like he was explaining basic math to a child. "Derek respects us because he sees us as independent. If he knew we needed help, it would change everything. But I'm the one providing the help, which is why this conversation stays between us," Mom said firmly. "Derek is planning to move back home next month to save money for his future. We're going to tell him it's to help us with expenses around the house. Small things. Groceries, utilities. He'll feel good about contributing without knowing the real situation." The restaurant suddenly felt suffocating. The family at the next table was laughing at something, their joy a sharp contrast to the nightmare unfolding at mine. Derek was going to move back into the house I was paying for, believing he was helping parents who were already taken care of, while I continued bleeding money from my studio apartment across town. "You're going to let him think he's supporting you, while I actually am. You don't understand the bigger picture," Dad said. "Derek has leadership potential. He needs to feel confident needed. Your contributions are appreciated, but they're just money. Derek brings something more valuable to this family." "What's more valuable than keeping you from foreclosure?" Mom's eyes flashed. "Respect. Pride. Derek makes us proud to be his parents. You just make us feel guilty for needing help." That's when Derek returned, sliding back into his chair with his phone still in hand. "Sorry about that. Client emergency. You know how it is." "Of course, sweetheart," Mom said, her voice transforming into warm honey. We're so proud of how dedicated you are." Derek grinned. "Speaking of dedication, I've been thinking about that conversation we had last week. About moving back home, I think it's time. I want to help you guys out more. You don't need to worry about us," Mom said, playing her role perfectly. "But having you close would be wonderful." Dad nodded. "We're managing fine financially, but having family nearby means everything." I watched this performance in stunned silence. They were setting up the exact scenario Mom had just described right in front of me. Derek was going to move into my house, thinking he was being magnanimous, while I continued paying for the privilege of being treated like a burden. "That's settled then," Derek said. "I'll give my landlord notice this week." He looked around the table, his gaze sliding past me like I wasn't even there. Family has to stick together, right? Support each other through everything. Mom raised her glass. "To family support." Dad joined the toast. "To family support." Derek clinked their glasses enthusiastically. "To family support." They all looked at me expectantly. I raised my water glass because what else could I do? But the words stuck in my throat. I wasn't family support. I was family exploitation, and they'd just made it crystal clear that they intended to keep it that way. After dinner, Derek hugged Mom and Dad goodbye, promising to call them tomorrow about moving logistics. He clapped me on the shoulder as an afterthought. "Good seeing you, man. Maybe we'll hang out more when I'm back home." I watched him walk away, whistling some tune I didn't recognize, completely oblivious to the financial puppet strings that had just been revealed. The parking lot felt cold despite the mild October evening. Mom and Dad climbed into the car I'd helped them keep by covering their insurance payments. "Remember what we discussed?" Mom called through her window. "Some things are better left unsaid." They drove away, leaving me standing under a streetlight, finally understanding that I wasn't a son making sacrifices for his family. I was a silent partner in my own humiliation, funding a lie that painted me as the jealous failure while elevating Derek as the golden child. The drive home to my studio apartment gave me 30 minutes to process what had happened. 30 minutes to realize that every dollar I'd sent them had been poisoned from the start. They weren't grateful. They were entitled. And they'd turned my generosity into a weapon against my own reputation. But what they didn't know was that I'd been keeping records. Every transfer, every payment, every emergency they'd claimed. And tomorrow, I was going to start digging deeper into exactly how my money had been spent. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spread every bank statement from the past 2 years across my kitchen table, cross-referencing dates and amounts with the calendar on my phone. What I found made my stomach turn. The $6,200 I sent each month was supposed to cover their mortgage, utilities, property taxes, and basic living expenses. But when I started tracing the money, I discovered a pattern that went far beyond basic survival. Mom's checking account showed regular transfers to Derek labeled as gifts and support. 200 here, 500 there, sometimes 1,000 at once. The dates corresponded with Derek's social media posts about expensive dinners, weekend trips to nearby ski resorts, and new additions to his wardrobe. My money was funding Derek's lifestyle while he remained completely unaware of the source. But it got worse. Dad had been using my emergency credit card, the one they were supposed to touch only for true crises to pay for things that had nothing to do with emergencies. Derek's membership to an exclusive business networking club. $750. Derek's professional headshots for the company website. $400. Derek's subscription to a premium gym downtown. $220 a month for 8 months running. I found receipts in Mom's email forwarded to my account because I was the primary cardholder for Derek's business wardrobe shopping sprees. Suits, ties, dress shirts, shoes. Everything Derek needed to look successful in his new position had been purchased with my credit. while he believed these were gifts from parents who wanted to see him succeed. The most painful discovery came when I traced the payment for last night's celebration dinner. Dad had used my card. I had literally paid for the meal where they told me I didn't matter. My phone rang at 7 in the morning. Derek's name flashed on the screen. "Hey man, I wanted to thank you for last night. I know family dinners aren't really your thing anymore, but it meant a lot to have everyone there." I almost laughed. Family dinners aren't my thing. You know what I mean. You've been kind of distant lately. Mom and Dad have noticed it too. They worry about you. They worry about me. Look, I get it. Seeing your little brother succeed can be tough. But you're 32, Horace. It's time to stop competing and start focusing on your own path. I was 32 years old working double shifts to fund his success, and he was giving me life advice. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. "Derek, can I ask you something? How do you afford all the networking events and professional development stuff? Mom and Dad help out sometimes. They've been really supportive of my career goals. I'm lucky to have parents who believe in investing in their kids' futures." Investing how? They've got some savings built up from smart investments over the years. Grandpa's insurance settlement gave them a good foundation. They told me you've been trying to take credit for their financial planning, which is pretty weird, but whatever. The point is, they're in a position to help me build something real. Each word felt like a nail being hammered into my coffin. They hadn't just hidden my contributions. They'd actively turned Derek against me by making him believe I was lying about helping them. "What exactly have they told you about me?" Derek's tone shifted, becoming defensive. "Nothing bad. Just that you've been claiming you help them financially, which doesn't make sense because they're obviously doing fine on their own. Mom thinks maybe you're feeling left out because they can afford to help me with career stuff, and you're still struggling. I made more money than Derek did, even with his promotion. The only reason I appeared to be struggling was because I was giving it all away to support the very parents who were now positioning me as the family failure. Derek, what if I told you that the money they're using to help you actually comes from me?" He laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. "Come on, man. Don't do this. Mom warned me you might try this conversation. She warned you. She said you've been having a hard time accepting that they're financially stable without your help. Look, I know you work hard at the plant, but they don't need your money. They've got their house paid off, good retirement savings, and enough left over to help their kids when opportunities come up. It's not your fault you're not in a position where they can help you the same way." The call ended with Derek suggesting I talk to someone about my jealousy issues. I sat staring at my bank statements, understanding that my family had created an entire alternate reality where I was the bitter, lying older brother who couldn't accept his parents' success or his younger brother's achievements. But Derek had mentioned something that caught my attention. He said they told him the house was paid off. I pulled up the county property records online. The house still carried a mortgage balance of $468,000. The payments were $3,200 monthly due on the 15th of every month. The account was 2 payments behind before I started my transfers. They weren't just using my money to fund Derek's lifestyle. They were using it to save their home from foreclosure while telling Derek they owned it outright. The web of lies was bigger than I'd imagined, and I was starting to realize that Derek might not be the innocent victim I'd thought he was. His comment about Mom warning him suggested they'd been discussing me behind my back, preparing him for the possibility that I might tell him the truth. That afternoon, I drove past their house, my house really, since I was paying for it. Derek's car was in the driveway alongside a moving truck. He was already starting to move in, ready to be the supportive son who helped his self-sufficient parents with small expenses, never knowing he was moving into a home saved by his supposedly jealous older brother. I parked down the street and watched him carry boxes through the front door I'd kept from being foreclosure locked. The rage that built in my chest was unlike anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't just about money anymore. They'd stolen my identity, rewritten my history, and turned my love into a source of shame. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated how carefully I'd been tracking everything. And they had no idea that their perfect plan was about to collapse under the weight of documented truth. That evening, my sister Brenda called. "I need to see you," she said, her voice shaky. "There's something you need to know about Derek's engagement plans." Brenda arrived at my apartment 20 minutes later, her eyes red from crying. My little sister had always been the family peacekeeper, staying out of conflicts and trying to see the best in everyone. Seeing her this upset sent alarm bells through my entire system. "I can't keep this secret anymore," she said, collapsing into my desk chair. "It's eating me alive." "What secret?" "Derek's planning to propose to Madison next month. He asked Mom and Dad to help him pay for the ring." I felt my blood pressure spike. "How much?" $20,000. For some designer ring from that fancy jewelry store downtown. He showed them pictures, talked about how Madison deserves the best, how this ring will set the tone for their entire marriage. $20,000. More than 3 months of my transfers. Please tell me they said no. Brenda shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They said yes, Horace. They told him they could access the money from family savings, emergency funds they've been building up over the years." I knew exactly which emergency funds they meant. The account I'd been contributing to for 2 years, thinking it was for actual emergencies like medical bills or major home repairs. My money that I'd sacrificed dinners out and vacations and new clothes to build up was going to become Derek's engagement ring. "There's more," Brenda whispered. "I overheard Derek talking to Madison about you last week. He was telling her how you're the family disappointment who never got your life together. He said you've been trying to take credit for Mom and Dad's financial success because you can't stand that your little brother is doing better than you." The words hit like physical blows. Derek hadn't just been passive in this deception. He'd been actively participating, spreading lies about me to his girlfriend, poisoning her opinion before she even got to know me. Madison asked what you do for work, and Derek laughed. He told her you work at some factory and live in a studio apartment at 32, still trying to prove you're important by making up stories about helping the family financially. I closed my eyes, trying to process the betrayal. Not only was Derek unaware that my money was funding his success, he was actively mocking me for the very sacrifices that made his lifestyle possible. "Brenda, does he really not know where the money comes from?" "I don't think so. But Horace, there's something else, something worse." I couldn't imagine what could be worse than what I'd already learned. Mom and Dad have been talking about cutting you off once Derek's income gets high enough to replace your contributions. They've been calculating how much they'd need him to contribute monthly to maintain their lifestyle without your help. The room started spinning. They want to replace me with him. They think his new salary combined with Madison's income as a dental hygienist means they could ask Derek to help with family expenses without it being a burden. They're planning to tell him that their investment income has decreased and they need some assistance to maintain the house. So they're going to ask Derek to pay for the house I'm already paying for. That's the plan. And once he starts contributing, they're going to tell you that they don't need your help anymore. They want Derek to be the one supporting them because it makes them feel more proud. I leaned back against my kitchen counter, trying to absorb the full scope of their betrayal. They weren't just taking my money and giving Derek the credit. They were planning to phase me out entirely and replace me with him, making Derek the hero of a story I'd been writing with my own sacrifice for years. "There's one more thing," Brenda said quietly. "Derek's been encouraging them to ask you for more money. He doesn't know what it's for, but he told them that if you really want to help the family, you should be doing more. He's been encouraging them to exploit me. He thinks you're trying to buy your way into family importance. He told Mom and Dad that if you're so desperate to feel needed, they should let you prove it by increasing your contributions. He said it might help your self-esteem to feel useful. The cruelty was breathtaking. Derek thought he was giving me therapy advice, not realizing he was encouraging his parents to bleed me dry. "How long have you known about this?" "Months," Brenda admitted. "I kept thinking it would resolve itself somehow. I thought maybe Derek would figure out the truth, or Mom and Dad would tell him, or you'd stop sending money and force the issue. But then Derek started talking about the engagement, and I realized how deep this goes. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I was scared." She sobbed. "I was scared that if you knew the truth, you'd cut them off, and Derek would have to find out that his whole life has been built on a lie. I was scared that the family would fall apart." "The family has already fallen apart, Brenda. I just didn't know it yet." She looked up at me with desperate eyes. "What are you going to do?" I stared out my window at the city lights, thinking about Derek moving into the house I was paying for planning to propose with my money, believing he was the successful son of proud, independent parents, while they prepared to replace my financial support with his. I'm going to find out exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. "What do you mean?" "If they're this comfortable lying to Derek and exploiting me, I doubt this is the only deception they're running. I want to know everything before I decide what to do about it." Brenda nodded slowly. "There is something else, but you're not going to like it. At this point, I can't imagine anything making this worse. Derek's not just planning to propose. He's been asking Mom and Dad about inheritance planning. He wants to know what will happen to the house when they're gone, whether there's life insurance, retirement accounts, that kind of thing." My heart sank. And what did they tell him? They told him that since he'll be the one taking care of them in their later years, he'll be the primary beneficiary of everything. They said you've never shown interest in family responsibility, so it wouldn't make sense to burden you with inheritance details. The house I was saving from foreclosure would go to Derek. The retirement accounts I was helping them fund would go to Derek. The life insurance policies I was helping them maintain would benefit Derek. And I would get nothing except the knowledge that I'd funded my own erasure from the family legacy. They're planning to cut me out of the will. They already have. They updated everything 6 months ago. Derek gets the house, the investments, everything. They left you a token amount, $5,000, because they said completely cutting you out might look suspicious. $5,000. Less than 1 month of my contributions. That's what my family thought I was worth after years of sacrifice. I walked Brenda to her car, my mind reeling with everything she'd revealed. As she drove away, I realized that tomorrow I needed to do more than just review bank statements. I needed to understand the full scope of how my family saw me and how long this exploitation had been planned. But first, I was going to find out exactly what Derek really knew, and whether his ignorance was as innocent as Brenda believed. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I had a mission, and it couldn't wait. I needed to understand the full scope of my family's deception, and I suspected there were conversations happening that I wasn't privy to. Brenda had mentioned overhearing phone calls and seeing text messages, which meant they were communicating about me in ways I couldn't access. But technology has a way of revealing secrets, especially when people get careless. I started by checking the family cell phone plan I'd been paying for since Dad lost his job 2 years ago. As the account holder, I had access to usage records, but I'd never bothered to look at them before. Now, I was grateful for my own neglect of privacy boundaries. The text message logs showed an unusual pattern. There was a group text thread with heavy usage between Mom, Dad, and Derek, but my number wasn't included. The frequency had increased dramatically over the past few months, with dozens of messages sent daily. I couldn't see the content of the texts through the phone company records, but I could see the timing. The heaviest message activity happened right after my monthly transfers hit their account, and again after any time I visited or called them. That afternoon, I used an excuse to visit Mom and Dad's house. I told them I wanted to help Derek get settled in, knowing they'd appreciate the gesture of family unity. What I really wanted was a chance to get close to their devices. When I arrived, Derek was in the garage organizing his belongings. Dad was in the basement, fixing something, and Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She left her phone on the counter when she went to the bathroom, and I had about 30 seconds to act. My hands shook as I opened her messages app. The group chat was right there at the top, labeled Real Family. 3 members: Mom, Dad, Derek. Not me. I clicked on it and started scrolling up through months of conversation history. What I found destroyed any remaining illusion I had about my family's intentions. The messages started 8 months ago, right around the time Derek got his promotion track at work. Derek. Just had dinner with H. He's still acting like he's some big financial hero. It's actually kind of sad. Mom? He needs to feel important somehow. His life is pretty pathetic otherwise. Dad? As long as he keeps sending money, let him think whatever he wants. Sec, you guys don't actually need his money though, right? The insurance settlement from Grandpa covered most of your expenses. Mom? Of course, sweetheart. We just let him contribute because it makes him feel better about himself. Guilt money for being such a disappointment. My vision started to blur. Derek knew. He'd known all along that there was no insurance settlement, no family savings, no financial independence. He was actively participating in the lie while pretending to be innocent. I scrolled further. Derek? I was thinking if H is so desperate to feel needed, maybe you should ask him for more. Like a loyalty test. See how far he'll go. Dad. Interesting idea. What did you have in mind, Derek? Tell him you need help with some emergency. See if he'll dip into his savings. If he really wants to buy family love, make him pay for it. Mom, that's brilliant. And if he questions it, we can always say he's being selfish after everything we've done for him. The messages continued documenting months of strategic manipulation. They discussed which emergencies would sound most convincing, how to make me feel guilty for questioning their needs, and ways to increase my contributions without making it obvious they were exploiting me. But the worst messages were the ones where they mocked my attempts to be part of the family. Derek H. asked me about hanging out more when I move back home. Should I pretend to be interested? Mom, just be polite. We don't need him getting suspicious and cutting off the money before you're established enough to replace him. Derek, replace him how? Dad? Once your income stabilizes, we can transition from his contributions to yours. But we'll tell you it's for small expenses, not the full mortgage. That way, you feel good about helping without the burden H carries. Derek, genius. And what happens to H then? Mom? He gets the dignity of thinking he helped his family during a difficult time, and we get the relief of dealing with someone who actually deserves our respect. I had to stop reading. The bathroom door was opening, and Mom was coming back. I quickly closed the app and pretended to be checking my own phone. Finding everything okay, honey? Mom asked like she hadn't just spent months plotting my financial and emotional destruction. Everything's perfect, I managed to say. That evening, I went home and called Brenda. I need to see Derek's phone. I told her. What, why? I can't explain over the phone. Can you get me access to it somehow? Horace, you're scaring me. What did you find? Just trust me. I need to see what Derek has been saying about me, and I need proof. 2 days later, Brenda called with an opportunity. Derek had asked her to help him move some furniture, and he'd be leaving his phone on the counter while he worked. She could give me 5 minutes alone with it. I met them at the house and waited for my chance. When Derek and Brenda went upstairs to move a dresser, I grabbed his phone. I knew his passcode because I'd watched him enter it at dinner last week. I went straight to the real family chat and took screenshots of everything. Months of conversations that proved Derek not only knew about my financial contributions, but had been actively encouraging my parents to exploit me further. The messages revealed that Derek found my situation hilarious. He regularly shared jokes about me with his girlfriend Madison, calling me the family ATM, and too desperate to see how pathetic he looks. One message thread particularly stood out. Derek. Madison asked why H doesn't have a girlfriend at his age. I told her it's probably because he spends all his money trying to buy family approval instead of building his own life. Mom, that's probably accurate. Some people just aren't built for normal relationships. Derek. The funny thing is, he works so hard to feel important to us, but he'll never understand that money can't buy what I have naturally. Respect, love, pride. You can't purchase those things. Dad. Very wise son. That's the difference between you and your brother. You earn things through character. He tries to buy them through desperation. Derek. Should I feel bad that we're basically scamming him? Mom. It's not a scam. He's getting what he wants. The feeling that he matters. We're getting what we need. Financial stability. Everyone wins. Derek, true. And honestly, if someone is dumb enough to fall for it, they kind of deserve what they get. I screenshotted that entire conversation thread. Derek wasn't an innocent victim being protected by loving parents. He was an active collaborator in a scheme to bleed me dry while destroying my self-worth. The final screenshot I took was from just 3 days ago. Derek. Moving in tomorrow. This is going to be hilarious. H has no idea he's paying for a house I'm going to inherit while I get credit for being the supportive son who helps with expenses. Mom? Just remember to act grateful when we ask for your help with bills. We want H to see that you're stepping up so we can phase him out gracefully. Derek? Don't worry, I'll be the perfect son. And when H finally figures out he's been replaced, it'll be too late for him to do anything about it. I closed the phone and handed it back to Brenda when Derek came downstairs. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding with a rage I'd never experienced before. Thanks for helping. Derek said to me, completely unaware, that I'd just uncovered months of evidence proving his participation in my financial and emotional abuse. Anytime, I replied. Family has to stick together, right? He grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. Exactly. Family first. That night, I sat in my studio apartment looking at dozens of screenshots that proved my entire family had been actively conspiring against me for months. They hadn't just hidden my contributions from Derek. Derek had known everything from the beginning and had been encouraging them to exploit me further. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd documented everything in writing. And tomorrow, I was going to start using their own words to destroy the comfortable lies they'd built around my sacrifice. The war was about to begin, and I finally had ammunition. I couldn't sleep that night. The screenshots burned in my mind like acid, each message, a fresh wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. No more strategic planning. No more careful documentation. I was going to end this today, starting with Derek. I called him at 8 in the morning. Hey man, what's up? His voice was cheerful, probably because he thought he was living in a house supported by parents who loved him completely, unaware that every comfort was paid for by the brother he'd been mocking for months. We need to talk, face to face. Sure, I've got some time this afternoon. Want to come by the house Mom's making her famous lasagna for dinner. My famous lasagna paid for with my grocery money. But I kept my voice steady. Actually, I'd rather meet at your old apartment. You still have keys. Yeah, I haven't returned them yet. Why there? Privacy. I met Derek at his old apartment complex 2 hours later. The place he could afford, because my money had been subsidizing his lifestyle for years, letting him save for networking events and professional clothes while I worked overtime to cover his hidden expenses. He was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car with that confident smile I'd once admired. Now it looked like arrogance. "What's this about?" he asked as I approached. "I want to talk about your engagement plans." His face lit up. "Oh man, I've been hoping you'd ask. Madison is incredible. I can't wait for you to get to know her better. And the ring I have picked out, it's going to blow her mind. $20,000 is a lot of money for a ring. It's worth it for the right person. Mom and Dad agreed to help me out with some family savings they've built up over the years. I'm so lucky to have parents who believe in investing in their kids' futures." That's when I pulled out my phone and started reading directly from the screenshots. Derek asked why H doesn't have a girlfriend at his age. I told him it's probably because he spends all his money trying to buy family approval instead of building his own life. Derek's face went white. "What are you doing?" "That's Mom talking about you explaining to Madison why I'm single." "Want to hear more?" I kept reading. The funny thing is, he works so hard to feel important to us, but he'll never understand that money can't buy what I have naturally. Respect, love, pride. You can't purchase those things. "Where did you get those?" "Your phone. Thursday afternoon when you were moving furniture with Brenda." Derek's jaw clenched. "You went through my personal messages. Your personal messages about my personal finances. Let me read you my favorite one." I found the screenshot and read his exact words. "Should I feel bad that we're basically scamming him? Mom said it's not a scam. He's getting what he wants, the feeling that he matters. We're getting what we need. Financial stability. Everyone wins. You said, and I quote, true. And honestly, if someone is dumb enough to fall for it, they kind of deserve what they get." Derek stared at me for a long moment, his mask of innocence finally slipping away. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. "How long have you known?" "About the money I've always known. I'm the one sending it. About your involvement in the scam since Thursday." "It's not a scam. What would you call it?" Derek straightened up, and for the first time I saw him without any pretense. "I'd call it you finally getting what you deserve for being so pathetic." The words hit like a physical blow, but I'd expected them. What I hadn't expected was the genuine hatred in his voice. "You want to know the truth, Horace Fine? I've known about your money transfers for over a year. Mom told me everything last Christmas when I asked about their improved finances. And you know what? It's hilarious." "Hilarious? You work double shifts to pay for a house you'll never live in, supporting parents who can barely stand to be around you, funding a lifestyle for a brother who thinks you're a joke. And you do it because you're so desperate to matter that you'll accept any scraps of attention they throw your way." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't the Derek I'd grown up with. This was a stranger wearing my brother's face. I encouraged them to take more from you because honestly, Horace, what else do you have in your life? No girlfriend? No friends I've ever met? No hobbies? No ambitions beyond that dead-end factory job? At least this way, you get to feel useful. Useful? You're not smart enough to build wealth, not charismatic enough to build relationships, not ambitious enough to build a career. But you can work overtime and send money to people who actually matter. It's the only contribution you'll ever make that has any value. Each word was calculated to destroy me, and a year ago they might have worked. But I'd spent the past week learning exactly who I was dealing with. "Tell me about Madison," I said quietly. "What about her? Does she know that the ring you're planning to buy her is being paid for by your loser brother who works at a factory?" Derek's confident expression flickered. "Madison doesn't need to know the details of family finances. What about your apartment?" "The one you're moving out of because you can afford it thanks to money I've been unknowingly contributing to your lifestyle for years." "That's different." What about your car payments, your networking events, your professional wardrobe? Should I keep going, or do you want to explain to Madison that your successful image has been subsidized by the pathetic older brother you've been mocking? You wouldn't. Why not? You just told me I deserve to be exploited because I'm too pathetic to see it happening. If I'm that pathetic, what makes you think I'm stable enough to keep your secrets? For the first time, Derek looked uncertain. Look, we can work something out. What kind of something? You keep sending the money, we keep the family together. Isn't that what you want, to be part of something bigger than yourself? What I want, I said, pulling up the banking app on my phone, is to see what happens when the money stops. What do you mean? I mean, I'm curious to see how long it takes for your perfect life to fall apart when it's not being propped up by your supposedly pathetic older brother. I showed him my phone screen where I was logged into the account that auto-transferred to our parents every month. Want to watch me cancel this? You can't do that. Why not? According to your messages, I'm too dumb to realize I'm being scammed, too desperate to matter, too pathetic to deserve respect. What makes you think someone that pathetic would have the sense to keep enabling people who hate him? Derek lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. Easy there, golden boy. Let me finish reading your messages first. I found another screenshot. Moving in tomorrow. This is going to be hilarious. H has no idea he's paying for a house I'm going to inherit, while I get credit for being the supportive son who helps with expenses. Derek, I said, shaking my head. Did you really think you could inherit a house that's still $468,000 underwater on the mortgage? What are you talking about? The house isn't paid off. Mom and Dad lied to you about that too. The house I'm paying for every month still has a massive mortgage balance. And when they can't make the payments anymore, the bank is going to foreclose on your inheritance. Derek's face went gray. That's not possible. Check the county records yourself. Or better yet, ask Mom and Dad for the mortgage statements. Oh wait, you can't, because they've been lying to you just like they've been lying to me. If the house isn't paid off, where does the extra money go? Great question. Maybe you should ask them why they need $6,200 a month if the house is supposedly free and clear. I watched Derek process this information, seeing his perfect world start to crumble around him. But I wasn't done. One more thing, Derek. About that $20,000 engagement ring. What about it? Where exactly did you think that money was coming from? Because if there's no insurance settlement, no paid-off house, and no family savings, where would our financially struggling parents get 20 grand to help you propose? Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by panic. The money they're giving you for the ring, that's my money too. You're going to propose to Madison with an engagement ring bought by the pathetic brother who supposedly doesn't matter. Derek stared at me in horror as the full scope of the deception became clear. He wasn't the successful son of proud, independent parents. He was a 38-year-old man whose entire adult life had been a lie subsidized by the brother he'd been taught to mock. "What do you want?" he whispered. "I want you to think about something," I said, putting my phone away. "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to make some phone calls. Madison deserves to know where her engagement ring money is really coming from. Your workplace deserves to know that your professional image was built on borrowed funds. And the extended family deserves to know who's actually been supporting Mom and Dad all these years. You can't do that. Why not? You said I deserve to be exploited for being stupid enough to fall for it. Well, maybe you deserve to lose everything you've built on lies for being cruel enough to encourage it." I started walking back to my car, leaving Derek standing in the parking lot of the apartment he was about to lose access to, finally understanding that his perfect life was built on the sacrifice of the brother he'd spent a year mocking. "Horace, wait." I turned back. "Yeah, what if I apologize? What if I make this right somehow? Derek." I said softly. There's no making this right. You didn't just know about the money. You encouraged them to take more of it. You mocked me to your girlfriend. You planned to inherit a house I saved from foreclosure. You were going to propose with my sacrifice while believing you earned everything yourself. I can change. Maybe you can. But you're going to have to learn how to do it without my money. I left Derek standing there and drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was the one with the power to decide what happened next. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more conversation I needed to have before I made my final move. I should have gone home and planned my next move carefully. But rage had replaced strategic thinking. Instead, I drove straight to my parents' house, my house Derek's future inheritance that was still $468,000 underwater on a mortgage I'd been paying to prevent foreclosure. Mom answered the door wearing the expensive kitchen apron Derek had given her last Christmas purchased with my emergency credit card. Horace. This is a nice surprise. Derek said you two had a good talk this afternoon. Where's Dad? In the living room reading. Why don't you come in? I just made coffee with those fancy beans Derek brought us. More of my money at work, I thought, but I followed her inside. Dad looked up from his newspaper, smiling like he hadn't spent months plotting my financial and emotional destruction. Son, good to see you. How's work? Work is fine. Keeps me busy enough to afford supporting you. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. What's that supposed to mean? Dad asked. It means I've seen the family group chat Dad. All of it. Mom's coffee cup hit the saucer with a sharp clink. I don't know what you're talking about. Real family. 3 members. Mom, Dad, Derek. The group chat where you've been planning my financial exploitation for months. Dad set down his newspaper slowly. You went through our private conversations. My private conversations. My money. My sacrifice. My reputation you've been destroying. I think that gives me some rights to know what you're planning. Horace. You need to understand we were just trying to protect Derek from feeling obligated to us financially. Mom said, her voice taking on that manipulative tone I was starting to recognize. By letting him think I was a liar when I mentioned helping you. By letting him focus on his own success without worrying about us. And what about my success, Mom? What about my focus, my future? My life? Your life is fine, Dad said dismissively. You don't have the responsibilities Derek has. Because I've been paying for yours instead. The doorbell rang, interrupting the standoff. Mom went to answer it, and I heard a familiar voice. Cousin Janet, from Dad's side, the family gossip, who never missed a chance to catch up on everyone's business. Janet. Mom's voice became artificially bright. What a lovely surprise. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. I wanted to thank Derek for being so generous with you two. My blood ran cold. Janet continued talking as Mom led her into the living room. It's so wonderful that Derek stepped up to help with your expenses. My Harold keeps saying he should do more for us, but honestly, your Derek sets the example for what a good son looks like. Mom's face went white. Dad looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. Janet looked between them, sensing tension. Did I say something wrong? Janet. I said carefully. What exactly did my parents tell you about Derek helping with expenses? Well, they've been saying how grateful they are that Derek is contributing to the household finances now that he's doing so well. They were telling everyone at Cousin Rita's birthday party how proud they are to have a son who takes care of his family. The room went completely silent. I looked at Mom and Dad, understanding dawning like a slow sunrise. All the family gatherings I wasn't invited to. All the conversations I wasn't part of. You've been telling the extended family that Derek supports you financially. It's not that simple, Dad started. It's exactly that simple. You've been taking credit away from me and giving it to Derek with everyone who matters in this family. Janet looked confused. But Horace, aren't you doing well too? Your parents always speak so highly of Derek's success, but they don't mention you much. There it was. The final piece of the puzzle. I wasn't just being financially exploited and emotionally abused within the immediate family. My reputation had been systematically destroyed throughout our extended family network. Janet, can I ask you something? What do you think I do for a living? Well, I'm not really sure. Your parents don't talk about your work much. I always assumed you were still figuring things out. Still figuring things out. At 32, while working 60 hours a week to support the parents who were positioning Derek as the family success story. And what about the house? Do you know how Mom and Dad manage their mortgage payments? Mortgage. Oh, honey, they paid that off years ago with some insurance money. That's why Derek's contributions can go to other things like maintenance and improvements. I looked directly at Dad. Insurance money. We don't need to discuss family finances with Janet, he said firmly. Actually, I think we do. Janet, did you know that the house still carries a $468,000 mortgage balance? That's impossible, Janet said. They told us it was paid off. And did you know that I've been sending them $6,200 every month for years to prevent foreclosure? Janet's mouth fell open. She looked at Mom and Dad for confirmation, but they were staring at the floor. That can't be true, Janet whispered. It gets better, I continued. Derek's generous financial contributions that everyone's so proud of, they don't exist yet. But when they do start, there'll be maybe $500 a month for groceries and utilities. Meanwhile, I've been covering the mortgage insurance, property taxes, and emergency expenses. Why would they lie about that? Because having a successful son who chooses to help them sounds better than having a working-class son who sacrifices his own future to save them from financial ruin. Janet turned to Mom. Is this true? It's complicated, Mom said weakly. It's not complicated, I said. It's fraud, financial fraud, emotional fraud, and reputational fraud. They've been systematically erasing my contributions while elevating Derek's non-existent ones. I think I should go, Janet said, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding. Actually, Janet, before you leave, there's something else you should know. Derek's engagement ring that he's planning to buy, the $20,000 symbol of his success and love. That's being funded by my emergency savings account. Janet looked like she might faint. Derek's getting engaged, with my money, while believing it comes from family savings that don't exist. After Janet left, probably planning to call every relative in the tri-state area, I faced my parents alone. How long have you been telling the family that Derek supports you? Since he got promoted, Dad admitted. We wanted people to see him as successful, responsible. And what did you tell them about me? We told them you were going through a difficult period, trying to find your direction in life. A difficult period. For 2 years. We thought it would be temporary, Mom said. We thought you'd eventually move on, and Derek would take over naturally. Take over what a mortgage you can't afford. Property taxes, you can't pay a house that's worth less than you owe on it. Derek doesn't need to know those details. Derek is going to inherit a financial disaster, and he has no idea because you've been lying to him about everything. We've been protecting him. You've been setting him up for failure while destroying my reputation in the process. Dad stood up, his face red with anger. You want gratitude? Fine. Thank you for helping us through a rough patch. But don't act like you're some kind of martyr. You chose to help. Nobody forced you. I chose to help because I thought you needed it, and I thought you appreciated it. I didn't choose to be mocked, exploited, and erased from family history. You're being dramatic. Am I? Let me ask you something, Dad. When you die, what happens to Derek when he inherits a house with a $400,000 mortgage and no idea how to pay for it? We'll figure something out. You'll be dead. Derek will figure it out. And when he does, he'll realize that his entire adult life has been built on lies funded by the brother you taught him to mock. Mom started crying. We just wanted him to feel successful. At my expense. We thought you'd understand. We thought you'd want what's best for the family. I did want what's best for the family. That's why I've been bankrupting myself to support you. But apparently, what's best for the family doesn't include me actually being part of it. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. Do you want to know what I learned from Derek this afternoon? They waited in terrified silence. He's not innocent. He's known about my money for over a year. He's been encouraging you to take more from me. He thinks I deserve to be exploited for being stupid enough to fall for it. That's not true, Mom whispered. I have screenshots of every conversation. Derek actively participated in scamming me while pretending to be ignorant. Your golden boy is just as cruel as you are. What do you want from us? Dad asked. I want you to understand what's about to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to start making phone calls. Derek's girlfriend Madison is going to learn where her engagement ring money comes from. The extended family is going to learn who actually supports you financially. Derek's co-workers are going to learn that his professional image was subsidized by family money. You can't do that to him. Why not you did it to me? You destroyed my reputation to build his. Turnabout is fair play. He has a career, a future, a fiancé. You'll ruin his life. His life is already built on lies. I'm just going to reveal the truth. And then, what? What do you get out of destroying your brother's happiness? I get to watch him learn what it feels like to lose everything because of family betrayal. And then I get to build a new life with people who actually value me instead of exploiting me. I headed toward the door, but Dad grabbed my arm. Son, please, think about what you're doing. I've been thinking about it all week, Dad, and I've realized that I'm not your son. Sons get love, respect, consideration. I'm your financial resource, and resources can be depleted. We love you. You love my money. There's a difference. I left them standing in their living room, in the house I'd saved from foreclosure, surrounded by the furniture and appliances I'd helped them keep, finally understanding that their love had always been conditional on my willingness to be exploited. But I had one more stop to make before I started dismantling their comfortable lies. I needed to make sure Brenda understood what was coming, and I needed to give her a choice about which side of this war she wanted to be on. Because tomorrow everything was going to change. I found Brenda at her own apartment that evening, grading papers at her kitchen table. She taught third grade at a local elementary school, one of the few family members who'd built a life based on her own efforts rather than manipulation and lies. You look terrible, she said when she opened the door. What happened with Derek? I told her everything. The screenshots, the confrontation, the discovery about the mortgage Janet's visit, the systematic destruction of my reputation throughout the extended family. With each revelation, Brenda's face grew paler. They really said all those things about you. They've been saying them for months, years probably. And Derek knew. Derek orchestrated half of it. He wasn't a victim, Brenda. He was a co-conspirator. She sat down heavily in her desk chair. What are you going to do? I'm going to cut them off completely and expose the truth to everyone they've been lying to. Including Derek's girlfriend, especially Derek's girlfriend. She deserves to know that the man she's about to marry built his success on lies and exploitation. That'll destroy their relationship. Good. If Derek's relationship can't survive honesty, it doesn't deserve to exist. Brenda was quiet for a long time, processing everything I'd told her. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Horace. I knew some of it, but I had no idea how deep it went. I need you to know that whatever happens next, I don't blame you for keeping their secrets. You were trying to hold the family together. The family was already broken. I was just pretending it wasn't. So what are you going to do when this all comes out? I don't know, but I know I can't pretend anymore either. That night, I went home to my studio apartment and made a list. Every lie that needed to be exposed, every person who needed to hear the truth, every financial obligation that needed to be severed. The next morning, I started with the most important call. Madison. This is Derek's brother Horace. We met briefly at the family dinner last week. I need to talk to you about something important concerning Derek. Oh, hi, Derek mentioned you might call. He said you were having some family stress and might reach out for support. Even in crisis, Derek was trying to control the narrative. Actually, I need to tell you some things about Derek that you deserve to know before you make any long-term commitments. What kind of things? I told her everything. The financial manipulation, Derek's active participation in exploiting me, the lies about family savings, the engagement ring being purchased with my emergency fund. I sent her screenshots of Derek's messages mocking me and calling me the family ATM. Madison was quiet for a long time after I finished. Are you absolutely certain about all this? I can send you bank records, mortgage statements, screenshots of conversations. Everything is documented. Send them to me. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Madison was crying. I can't believe he lied to me about everything. His apartment, his lifestyle, his family's finances, even the engagement ring. None of it was real. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. No, I'm grateful you told me. I almost committed my life to someone who's been lying about everything that matters. That afternoon, I called cousin Janet back and asked her to arrange a family gathering. There's something everyone needs to know about the real family financial situation. The gathering happened that Sunday at Janet's house. 15 family members showed up expecting some kind of announcement about Derek's engagement or career success. Instead, they got the truth. I brought documentation, bank statements showing my monthly transfers, mortgage records proving the house wasn't paid off, screenshots of Derek's messages mocking me and planning my exploitation, county records showing the home's underwater value. For the past 2 years, I told the assembled family, Mom and Dad have been telling you that Derek supports them financially. The truth is, I've been sending them $6,200 every month to prevent foreclosure on a house that's worth less than they owe on it. Uncle Robert, Dad's older brother, looked stunned. They told us you were having trouble getting your life together. They told you that to hide the fact that my life has been on hold so I could save their lives. Derek's financial contributions don't exist. His success story is built on my sacrifice with my consent, but without my knowledge of how they were misrepresenting everything to all of you. Aunt Carol, Mom's sister, shook her head. Why would they lie about something like that? Because having a successful son who chooses to help sounds better than having a struggling son who sacrifices everything to prevent their homelessness. What about Derek? Does he know? Derek has known for over a year. He's been actively encouraging them to exploit me further because he finds my situation amusing. I showed them Derek's messages calling me pathetic and saying I deserved to be scammed for being dumb enough to fall for it. The room erupted in shocked conversations. Family members who had been praising Derek's generosity and criticizing my apparent lack of family commitment suddenly understood they'd been fed a completely false narrative. Janet stood up. Robert, Carol, everyone. We need to call Harold and Linda right now. They need to explain this. Dad answered the phone when Janet called. I could hear him through the speaker trying to minimize and justify their lies. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. We just wanted Derek to feel successful, and we didn't want people to pity us for needing help. So you destroyed Horace's reputation instead. Uncle Robert's voice was ice cold. Horace doesn't care about family reputation the way Derek does. Horace cared enough to bankrupt himself saving you from homelessness while you told everyone he was a failure. The call ended with Dad hanging up. Nobody tried to call back. But the most satisfying call came the next morning. Derek, you destroyed my life. I told people the truth. If that destroyed your life was built on lies. Madison broke up with me because she learned that everything you told her about yourself was false. I can't afford my apartment without the family help. Now you know how I've felt for 2 years. Mom and Dad are facing foreclosure. Now you know what I was preventing with my monthly transfers. The whole family thinks I'm a fraud. Because you are a fraud. You built your success story on my sacrifice while mocking me for providing it. What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you, Derek. I want you to learn how to build a life based on your own efforts instead of exploiting other people's generosity. And if I can't, then you'll fail, and you'll know that your failure is the result of your own choices instead of blaming other people for your problems. The rest unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. Derek lost his apartment within 60 days when he couldn't afford the rent without family subsidization. Mom and Dad entered foreclosure proceedings when my monthly transfers stopped, and Derek couldn't replace them. The engagement ring was returned to the jewelry store when Madison learned it was purchased with funds obtained through financial exploitation. But this isn't a story about revenge. This is a story about liberation. 6 months after I cut ties with my family's financial manipulation, my life transformed in ways I never expected. Without sending $6,200 every month to ungrateful relatives, I had money for the first time in years. I moved into a real apartment with a bedroom living room and kitchen big enough to cook actual meals. I started dating a woman named Catherine, who works as a physical therapist and has no interest in using people for their money. I enrolled in evening classes to learn computer programming, something I'd always wanted to try, but couldn't afford while funding my family's lifestyle. Most importantly, I learned the difference between being valued and being used. Brenda chose her side in the family war by maintaining a relationship with me while cutting ties with Mom, Dad, and Derek. She'd witnessed too much manipulation to pretend everything was normal. We have dinner together twice a month, building the kind of sibling relationship that should have existed all along. 3 months after I exposed everything, Mom called me, crying. The house was in final foreclosure proceedings, and Derek's income wasn't enough to save it. "We need your help," she sobbed. "We'll lose everything. You already lost everything when you chose exploitation over honesty. Please, we're your family. Family doesn't plot each other's financial destruction for months. Family doesn't mock each other's sacrifices. Family doesn't lie to extended relatives to destroy each other's reputations. We can make this right. You had 2 years to make it right. You chose to make it worse instead. What's going to happen to us? You're going to learn what it's like to face consequences for your choices. Derek is going to learn what it's like to build a life based on his actual abilities instead of subsidized success. And all of you are going to understand the difference between family and exploitation." They lost the house in foreclosure 4 months later. Derek moved back in with them at their rental apartment, finally providing real financial support instead of imaginary contributions. Mom got a part-time job at a retail store. Dad started driving for a ride-sharing service. For the first time in their adult lives, they were living within their actual means instead of my enhanced ones. Derek eventually called to apologize, but apologies don't undo years of mockery and exploitation. I wished him well in building an honest life, but I made it clear that our relationship was over. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. The most unexpected outcome was learning that other family members had their own stories of Mom and Dad's financial manipulation. Cousin Janet revealed they'd borrowed money from her 5 years ago and never paid it back. Uncle Robert admitted they'd talked him into co-signing a loan that he ended up paying off himself. Aunt Carol discovered they'd been lying about their financial situation for over a decade. My exposure of their current exploitation opened the door for family members to share their own experiences with being used by Harold and Linda. I wasn't their only victim. I was just their most recent one. Catherine often asks me if I regret cutting ties with my family. The answer is no. I regret that I waited so long to do it. I regret that I enabled their exploitation for 2 years. I regret that I allowed them to convince me that being used was the same as being loved. But I don't regret choosing my own freedom over their comfortable lies. The hardest lesson I learned was that some people will never appreciate sacrifice, kindness, or generosity. They'll take whatever you give them and demand more while mocking you for being foolish enough to provide it. But the most important lesson I learned was that you can't buy love, respect, or family connection. Real relationships are built on mutual care, honesty, and respect. Everything else is just exploitation with prettier words. My life now is smaller in some ways and larger in others. I don't have extended family gatherings or holiday celebrations with dozens of relatives, but I have authentic relationships with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. I have financial security for the first time in years. I have a romantic relationship built on mutual respect instead of obligation. I have a sister who chose honesty over family politics. I have a future that belongs to me instead of being sacrificed for other people's comfort. Some people might call what I did cruel. I prefer to call it honest. Derek, Mom, and Dad built their comfortable lives on my sacrifice, and they were planning to continue that exploitation indefinitely while positioning me as the family failure. They gambled that I would continue accepting abuse indefinitely because I was too desperate for family connection to fight back. They lost that gamble. The day I stopped enabling their exploitation was the day I started building a life worth living. If you're supporting family members who mock your sacrifice, hide your contributions, and plan your replacement, remember, this being related to someone doesn't give them the right to exploit your generosity indefinitely. Love doesn't require you to fund other people's lies about you. Respect doesn't require you to accept financial abuse with gratitude. Family doesn't require you to sacrifice your future for people who plan to erase you from theirs. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is force people to face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop enabling their cruelty. And sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save people who view your drowning as their opportunity to stay afloat. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it completely. And now I'm building a life with people who see my struggles as reasons to support me, not opportunities to exploit me. That's the difference between family and relatives. Family lifts you up. Relatives just use you as stepping stones. Choose family, even if you have to build it yourself. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family members took advantage of your generosity while giving credit to someone else? How did you handle discovering that your sacrifice was being used against you? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else realize they're not alone in dealing with family exploitation. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family manipulation and building authentic relationships. And don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that their worth isn't measured by how much abuse they're willing to accept from relatives. Remember, you deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not one-sided exploitation. Don't let anyone convince you that being used is the same as being loved. Until next time, choose the people who choose you back.